p.m.
CBS News. A spokesman for the United Nations Emergency Force in the Middle East says that Egypt's Second Army has been trying to consolidate a 200-yard advance and is under attack by the Israelis. This is George Herman reporting on the CBS radio network, and this is...
Our telescopes at the diminishing comet Kohoutek today for the final time, collecting their last major bulk of data from the fizzled phenomenon. Jerry Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue will continue to monitor the comet's trek across the heavens during the remaining 5 weeks of their planned 84-day flight using handheld cameras and special instruments. However, the sophisticated battery of sun-watching telescopes will not be used as Kohoutek moves further from the sun and reflects less light each day. Scientists say the comet will be a considerable disappointment to Earthlings who will need binoculars to get a good look at Kohoutek. The comet's brightness is about 50 times less bright than predicted weeks ago and won't appear any more significant in the sky than the average star. The final crew in the $2.6 billion Skylab program today also photographed a 7,500-mile swath of Earth covering their ground track from the Pacific coast of Mexico across the southeastern U.S. and over the North Atlantic to just off the coast of France. The Earth Studies instruments collected information on crop irrigation needs in Mexico, highways near Veracruz, and weather conditions over the U.S. and the Atlantic. That's state and local news on this part of the Weekend Report. I'm Jerry Kamen.
CBS News. Army tanks and troops armed with machine guns continue to patrol London's Heathrow Airport, and Scotland Yard has put its entire bomb squad on alert. This is Bob Schieffer reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Dan Streeter from New York, and at this hour... News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Dan Streeter from New York, and at this hour...
o'clock.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is George Caldwell from New York, and at this hour...
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
Time at the tone will be 5 p.m. CBS News. A lot of America went to school in the dark this morning, and the government wants to shed a little more light on its own knowledge of the oil shortage. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network. From Washington comes today's news, as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas.
Good evening, everybody. Week in orbit. These including radio and TV for relaxing, candy and peanuts to snack on, a washer and dryer to enable them to change clothes more often, better soap and shaving gear, more windows to better view the universe, and more time to think. Most of all, they say they miss their families. Jerry Carr, for one, saying, I miss watching football with my family, and I miss a good cold can of beer while I'm watching that game. And so it goes out in the loneliness of space. A new super glue called cyanoacrylic. It's the subject of a warning today from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. Cyanoacrylic, originally developed for use in surgery, now sold under several brand names, perhaps 1 million tubes now on the market. And what's wrong with it? Oh, Commission Chairman Richard Simpson says it's simply too good. The new super glue, said to have bonded together the fingers of some who have used it, also bonding their fingers to other parts of their bodies, to the point where they needed medical help to get free. How would you like that? Simpson noting that this is one glue that will truly glue almost anything to anything. Anyone you'd like to be glued to? And so long until tomorrow.
CBS News, this is Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Thomas brings the news. From San Clemente, from London, from Jerusalem, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. But first, this message.
CBS News. 2 white papers were released by the Western White House today to prove President Nixon's contention that no political considerations influenced his treatment of the dairy industry, or ITT, in the 1972 election year. I'm Stephanie Shelton reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
Estimates Carr, Gibson, and Polk enter day number 55 of their scheduled 84-day flight. Today, the crew will perform more scientific research on the sun and Earth. The astronauts, meanwhile, remain in fine shape.
The 5 p.m.
CBS News. President Nixon has invited 6 major European oil users to join Japan and Canada in a Washington energy meeting February 11th. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Clock.
Here's news of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
CBS News. Federal court testimony made public today says billionaire Howard Hughes donated 17 blank checks to President Nixon's re-election campaign in 1972. This is Gary Shepard reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
CBS News. A plane crash in Colombia reportedly involving some employees of an American oil company. This is Doug Poling reporting on the CBS Radio Network. Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup. Philip Schaeffer in Houston says they've earned it because of 2 straight days of highly significant research. The results could have important long-range effects. The astronauts have been performing detailed scientific observations of the Earth and Sun, and these observations may lead to discovery of untapped sources of energy. They're searching for evidence of petroleum deposits and sources of geothermal energy in many lands. And from the Sun, they hope to find secrets of secrets that could lead to endless amounts of pollution-free power. Many scientists are striving to perfect a technique for viable production of energy from thermonuclear fusion. What they hope to do, in effect, is to harness that power, the hydrogen bomb reaction, to generate power by fusion, eliminating the present process, which requires the triggering of an atomic fission bomb in order to set off a fusion device. The fission bomb produces radiation. Once the process is bypassed, power from thermonuclear fission will be feasible.
For the Skylab 3 astronauts, Gerald Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue have the day off today from their major scientific chores. That's local news to the hour. Ken Prinsky.
5 p.m.
CBS News. Blood and oil. A new mission's underway to staunch one flow and start the other. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Here's news of the on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From Bismarck, North Dakota, from Bangkok, from outer space, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. But first, this message.
The men of Skylab 3 were given a day off. Now, how do you get a day off, a holiday in space? Well, necessary chores called off. Astronauts Gary Carr, Ed Gibson, Bill Pogue, they were given permission to wing it. This following 2 days of intensive research work. The success of the 3 astronauts is said to have left ground control amazed. Ed Gibson, for one, completing his work so rapidly, he even tried to take over some of the tasks of Mission Commander Carr. Anyhow, they were all having a holiday far out there in space.
Secretary of State Henry Kissinger is scheduled to leave Washington at this hour for another peace mission to the Middle East. This is Gary Shepard reporting on the CBS radio network.
This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
Round of Middle East negotiations is underway in the Nile city of Aswan. Diplomatic correspondent Marvin Kalb is there.
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From Madrid, from Aswan, Egypt, from Kalamazoo, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. But first, this message.
Program Director William Schneider saying the men of Skylab 3 are in good condition, adding he can see no impediment to a full 84-day flight. Further observing that Skylab will be remembered because it has proven that man can go up into space and do useful work in a number of categories, said he. The new
CBS News. Higher prices for gasoline and home heating oil are being put into effect at this hour by the Exxon Corporation, the nation's largest oil company. This is Gary Shepard reporting on the CBS radio network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is David Garcia in Washington, and at this hour...
are confident the Skylab 3 astronauts can complete their 84-day mission, but say the flight could be ended within 5 or 6 days if an ailing gyroscope fails. This is a change from earlier estimates that the space station might be kept aloft for as long as 26 days if a gyro were lost. Safety factors figured in that change. Showing no concern for the faltering gyro, astronauts Gerald Carr, William Pogue, and Edward Gibson had a heavy research schedule today, their 58th day in space. On the flight plan were medical and solar astronomy experiments and an Earth resources pass over Mexico and the central United States. With 4 weeks to go before the planned February 8th splashdown, Skylab program director William Schneider told newsmen Friday, "We've had a successful mission so far. The crew has done all the things you would expect them to do."
CBS News. Outwardly, the atmosphere appears good in Secretary of State Kissinger's Egyptian talks, but Israel is still waiting to hear whether he has won an acceptable agreement. Good morning. I'm Neil Strasser reporting on the CBS radio network.
The Skylab 3 astronauts can complete their 84-day mission, but say the flight could be ended within 5 or 6 days if an ailing gyroscope fails. This is a change from earlier estimates that the space station might be kept aloft for as long as 26 days if a gyro were lost. Safety factors figured in the change. Showing no concern for the faltering gyro, astronauts Gerald Carr, William Pogue, and Edward Gibson had a heavy research schedule today, their 58th in space. On the flight plan are medical and solar astronomy experiments and an Earth resources pass over Mexico and the central U.S. With 4 weeks to go before the planned February 8th splashdown, Skylab program director William Schneider told newsmen yesterday, "We've had a successful mission so far. The crew has done all the things you would expect them to do."
Information Radio. This is Dan Streeter from New York, and at this hour...
The time now is 10 a.m. KLVJ in Austin.
CBS News. Henry Kissinger's bid for pulling apart Arab and Israeli frontline troops appears to be having some effect. I'm Tony Sargent reporting on the CBS radio network. CBS CBS News. No injuries are reported after a big commercial jetliner skidded off a runway in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm Tony Sargent reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
At the sound of the tone, the time will be 2 p.m.
CBS News. Secretary of State Kissinger is due back in Egypt shortly following a day of talks in Israel that apparently have produced results. I'm Christopher Glenn reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Dan Streeter from New York, and at this hour... News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Dan Streeter from New York, and at this hour...
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
Skylab 3, entering their 59th day in space, are heading for another landmark. We get that story from John Meyer.
The Skylab astronauts will be making news today as they break the space-time record. After tonight at 8:10 p.m., the crew of Gerald Carr, Edward Gibson, and Bill Pogue will be setting new endurance records for time spent in space, records which could last well into the 1980s. The flight could last as long as 84 days if one of the two remaining gyroscopes doesn't fail or another problem crop up. Only the space shuttle scheduled for sometime in the 1980s will match the time spent by the Skylab astronauts. The spacemen may have missed yesterday's Super Bowl game, but the game was videotaped, and they'll watch it when they return to work. I'm John Meyer.
Time is 5 p.m.
CBS News, Egypt doesn't immediately buy an Israeli plan for a pullback in the Middle East. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Degrees at exactly 6 o'clock.
Here's news of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
Today's news, as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. But first, this message.
Tonight Eastern Time, our Skylab 3 astronauts will be setting a new space endurance record. Jerry Carr, Ed Gibson, Bill Pogue completing 59 days, 11 hours, and 9 minutes in orbit, surpassing the previous mark set by Skylab 2. And then on and on they'll go. Skylab 3 shooting for 84 days in all, a new space endurance mark that they say, many are saying it, may stand for a decade.
Tonight Eastern Time. I'm Stephanie Shelton reporting on the CBS Radio Network. In just 10 minutes, the three Skylab 4 astronauts become the record holders for the longest consecutive space flight. Astronauts Gerald Carr, William Pogue, and Edward Gibson will have been in space 59 days, 11 hours, 9 minutes, and 11 seconds when that new record begins, surpassing the time in space spent by the Skylab 3 crew. The current Skylab crew hopes to stay in space for a total of 84 days.
CBS News. The government reveals its new rules on oil allocations, and suddenly the oil crisis seems not to be a crisis at all. I'm Stuart Nobins reporting on the CBS Radio Network. Crew just 50 minutes ago began setting new records for duration of a single space flight, more than 59 days. This exchange marked the event. The first voice from Houston.
You guys just passed the world record mark. You're now the world champs. We're real proud to have been here the night you said it, and real proud to have taken part in it since day one.
Thanks a lot, Dick, and all the guys on the purple team. We appreciate all the good support you've been giving us down through the days here, and let's hang in there and get the rest of it.
Yes, sir, you betcha. We'll be here.
The Skylab crew is scheduled for splashdown February 8th. More after this.
Here's news of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
CBS News. The new federal fuel allocations have been published. They take effect immediately. I'm Stuart Nopins, reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
New records for the duration of the single space flight, more than 59 days. This exchange marked the event. The first voice from Houston.
You guys just passed the world record mark. You're now the world champ. We're real proud to have been here tonight. You said it, and real proud to have taken part in it since day one.
Nice work, Dick, and all the guys on the purple team. We appreciate all the good support you've been giving us down through the days here, and let's hang in there and get the rest of it.
Yes, sir. You betcha. We'll be here.
The Skylab cruise scheduled for splashdown February 8th.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
The time at the tone, 5 p.m.
CBS News. The 18-minute buzz on the Watergate tape was put there, it is testified, in installments. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Here's news of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
California comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. First, this word.
This is KTRH, your news, sports, and information station in Houston, reminding you that 50 is thrifty.
CBS News. There's some answers in Judge Sirica's court today, but they've raised more questions. I'm Stuart Nopins, reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
Tone will be 5 p.m.
CBS News, Judge Sirica has held more hearings into the Watergate tape erasure. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Spain comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. But first, this message.
This is KTRH Houston, your news, sports, and information station, reminding you that 50 is thrifty.
CBS News. Critics of the oil industry demand more information on supplies and prices. One governor talks about public regulation. I'm Stuart Nopins, reporting on the CBS Radio Network. CBS News. A new investigation into the White House tape erasures. This probe was made by the FBI. I'm Stuart Nopins, reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is George Engel from New York, and at this hour...
CBS News. Egypt and Israel have agreed to an out-of-cannon settlement along the Suez front. I am Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network. Today, for another week of work in space for the Skylab astronauts. This go-ahead is largely a formality. The aim still is to make the full 84 days of the mission, which will bring the men back on February the 8th.
Here's news of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From the White House, from Baghdad, from Marsabit, Kenya, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. But first, this message.
CBS News. With the Egyptian-Israeli military front now to be stabilized, attention turns to the Syrian-Israeli front. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
News. Judge Sirica makes a recommendation in the matter of the tapes. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Here's news of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
Thomas brings the news. From kilometer 101, from Washington, from Moscow comes today's news as reported by Reed Collins, substituting for Lowell Thomas. But first, this message.
Vietnamese attacks are in South Vietnam's Highlands. The action is described as the heaviest assault in 18 months. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Neil Strasser with the CBS World News Roundup. CBS News. Peking today is protesting alleged fines, but saying nothing about some shooting. Good morning. I'm Neil Strasser reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Time is 1 o'clock.
CBS News. President Nixon delivered a radio address to the nation today, a sort of progress report on the energy crisis. I'm Christopher Glenn, reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Correct time is 4 o'clock.
CBS News. Fog is hampering the search for 14 persons still missing following the collision of two ships on the Mississippi River. Good afternoon. This is John Meyer reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
CBS News. Houston police tonight are holding a gunman who for 10 hours held more than a dozen persons hostage in a grocery store. This is Chris Kelly reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Cairo says repair work will begin soon at the cities of Port Said, Ismailia, and Suez around the Suez Canal. Good morning. I'm Steve Young reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
At the tone, the time 6 p.m.
CBS News. Economic estimates from two top administration officials tonight paint a somewhat grim picture for the next 3 months, somewhat better after that, and perhaps better still in the last half of 74. I'm Christopher Glenn reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Dan Streeter from New York, and at this hour...
This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
Carr, Ed Gibson, and William Pogue continue along on the Skylab 3 mission. Most of their time is being devoted to research work as they approach the completion of an 84-day flight. Ground controllers still see no problems with that troublesome gyroscope, which acted up over the weekend. The officials do not think that the stabilizing device will cut short the mission. Houston.
They go at 6 o'clock.
Here's news of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
Your news, information, and sports station, KTRH Houston.
CBS News. Secretary of Agriculture Earl Butz says beef prices already at an all-time high must be allowed to go even higher. I'm Jim Kilpatrick reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
CBS News. The oil controversy bubbles on Capitol Hill. One major oil-producing country sees no end yet to the oil embargo. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Physicist, that story from NASA, and spokesman Dennis Williams.
Skylab Chief Scientist Ed Gibson had a dream come true tonight, and his fellow solar scientists here in Mission Control Center are still buzzing. Gibson, a solar physicist and the author of a textbook called The Quiet Sun, has been spending long hours observing the sun in the hope that he might catch the earliest stages of a solar flare. Tonight, Dr. Gibson was working at the control of Skylab solar instruments when he thought he saw indications of increasing radiation in a storm center on the western half of the sun. The X-radiation, scientists learned later from an orbiting satellite, was to reach a peak level as great as the Skylab crew had seen during their 9.5 weeks in space. Gibson's quick action and good judgment should provide scientists on the ground with extensive data on the conditions that generate the tremendous bursts of energy released in solar flares. Today's combination of skill and good fortune will aid scientists in unraveling the mystery of the sun's explosive atmosphere. The evening excitement made up for the lack of information on an equally large solar flare that the astronauts missed this afternoon while they surveyed conditions here on the Earth. This is Dennis Williams at the Mission Control Center in Houston.
It's 21 minutes before the hour of 12 midnight, and it's time now for the Late Night News Business Report with KTRH newsman Howard Phillips.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
3 astronauts, Carr, Gibson, and Pogue, will aim their cameras and heat sensors at suspected hotspots in California, Nevada, and Wyoming today. The crew is searching for geothermal hotspots that may be converted to new sources of energy.
CBS News, Secretary Kissinger believes the oil embargo may soon be lifted. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
6 o'clock. Of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
CBS News. An avalanche in British Columbia. A whole roadside complex is reported wiped out. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
The hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is George Caldwell from New York, and at this hour...
CBS News. An American citizen will walk out of a Syrian prison tomorrow. His liberation, a byproduct of the Middle East negotiations. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
CBS News. Senator Jackson questions oilmen on alleged cutoff in time of peril. This is Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From Beersheba, from the White House, from Christchurch, New Zealand, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. Now, here is Lowell Thomas and the news.
Good evening, everybody. It's really unclear today that a troublesome gyroscope may have had it. Ground control is saying the number 2 gyro appears to be slowly, surely caving in. Adding, if true, the flight will continue as planned, but there will be a cutback in scientific activity.
President Nixon sent a series of energy proposals to Congress today, insisting on self-sufficiency for the United States by 1980. I'm Jim Kilpatrick, reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
CBS News. Senator Henry Jackson talks with oil company officials about what he calls serious business, the question of their corporate patriotism. I'm Stuart Novins, reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Is continuing to give some trouble, and worried ground officials at the Space Center say tonight that it appears to be caving in. The officials do not expect it to prevent completion of the present crew's 84-day mission, but it may prevent some space experiments. NASA spokesman Dennis Williams has more on that story.
Scientific research is continuing aboard the Skylab space station despite a persistent problem with one of two main gyroscopes. Skylab number 2 gyroscope, which is used to hold the 100-ton laboratory steady during investigations of the Earth, Sun, and stars, has been spinning a little slower than usual since just after midnight last night. Flight controllers can't guess when or if the gyroscope might fail, but plans to use Skylab's nitrogen gas thrusters are ready to go, and another set of small command module engines can also keep the space station steady. If the gyroscope should go out, the Skylab crew will probably begin immediate planning for a final spacewalk, but the backup fuel supply can keep the crew comfortable through the remaining 15 days of the planned 84-day mission. Late this afternoon, Flight Director Neil Hutchinson said astronauts Jerry Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue, who is celebrating his 44th birthday today, could complete the planned flight on Skylab's backup systems, but that NASA planners might choose to spend more of the limited gas to perform Earth resources studies and shorten the record-breaking flight by a few days. The crew is scheduled to splash into the Pacific Ocean southwest of San Diego on February 8th. This is Dennis Williams at the Mission Control Center in Houston.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
CBS News, Egil Krogh says the president gave no instructions on the Ellsberg break-in. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From the Suez Canal, from New Delhi, from outer space, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. Now, here is Lowell Thomas and the news.
Good evening, everybody. Astronauts will become the world's most experienced spacemen. Carr, Gibson, Pogue, then to complete 69 days, 15 hours, 45 minutes, 30 seconds in space, or 1 second more than the previous record. And they'll go on and on and on.
Tense tonight with heavy shelling of Phnom Penh. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
Today, beginning the last 2 weeks of their record 84-day mission, set another space endurance mark at 12:47 Houston time this morning, and that could stand into the 1980s. Carr, Gibson, and Pogue surpassed the mark for the most time spent in space by an individual when they broke the record of 69 days, 15 hours, 45 minutes, held by Alan Bean, who racked up his clockwork on the Apollo 12 and Skylab 2 missions. That's local news to the hour. This is Ken Krinsky.
I'm Dave Levesque.
An American taken captive in the Paracel Island fighting. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour...
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From Peking, from Buenos Aires, from Gujarat, India, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. Now, here is Lowell Thomas and the news.
Good evening, everybody.
CBS News. Ohio's governor calls for a Nixon impeachment. A federal court hands down a ruling against the president. I'm Stuart Novims reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Neil Crosser with the CBS World News Roundup.
The Skylab 3 crew admit they're feeling just a little homesick. Astronauts Gerald Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue have today off after 7 straight work days. They'll get a chance for a shower and have only 10 hours of work between them planned. The space trio yesterday broke the total time in space record of 69 days, 15 hours, 45 minutes, and 29 seconds, and the man they took the mark away from called up to offer his congratulations. "You did it the hard way, all in one shot," said Alan Bean, Skylab 2 commander and Apollo 12 moonwalker. Chatting with their fellow astronaut, the third crew revealed their thoughts after 71 days in space with only 13 to go. Gibson told Bean during the air-to-ground radio conversation, "We're looking forward to coming back."
CBS News.
It's 7 o'clock.
The Chicago Tribune reports former White House aide Eagle Krogh has revealed the existence of a comprehensive study detailing the Pentagon spy ring established to steal secrets from Henry Kissinger's National Security Council. This is David Jackson reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
The Earth resource survey the length of California, Mexico, and across South America was the only major task Saturday for the crew of Space Station Skylab. Jerry Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue operated the Earth resources cameras and sensors along a 9,300-mile swath. As Skylab crossed the Peruvian coast, Commander Carr reported color shadings or blooms in the Pacific, indicating the presence of plankton, minuscule forms of sea life upon which some species of whale feed. The rest of Saturday is free time for Carr, Gibson, and Pogue, in which they may read, listen to music tapes, or simply sit in the wardroom and watch the Earth go by 270 miles below. It's back to work Sunday for the Skylab 4 crew with 2 Earth resources surveys and more medical and solar astronomy experiments on the flight plan.
Mission theater and movie star Terry White, Splashdown, scheduled for February 8th. 10 o'clock.
CBS News. Israeli troops today resumed their withdrawal from the west bank of the Suez Canal after stopping yesterday to observe the Jewish Sabbath. Good morning, I'm Steve Young reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Tasked this fight-enabling-control gyroscope rested most of Saturday and mapped the scientific strategy for their last 2 weeks in orbit. Gerald Carr, Edward Gibson, and William Pogue, now the most experienced spacemen in the world, had 10 hours of science tasks squeezed into their day-off activities of showers, reading, and watching the Earth. It was their 72nd day of the 84-day flight. A controlled gyroscope that began acting up early Wednesday continued to limp along at reduced spinning speed, higher temperatures, which indicates it's going to be quitting soon completely.
Is meeting today to debate proposals for preliminary talks with Syria on disengaging troops on the Golan Heights front. But military action erupted there again today, Syrian artillery shelling Israeli positions and claiming to have inflicted 10 casualties and to have knocked out some engineering equipment.
Will be 6 p.m. and time for CBS News.
CBS News. Attorney General William Saxby says he's convinced President Nixon had no part of any tinkering with the Watergate tape with the 18-and-a-half-minute gap, though he did always suspect that someone tampered with it. Saxby also said he doubts the House will impeach the president unless there is strong additional evidence against him. And he said that if impeachment were brought, it would, quote, tear the country apart. Saxby's comments are contained in an interview in U.S. News and World Report magazine. I'm Christopher Glenn reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Dan Streeter from New York, and at this hour...
Their 76th workday aboard Space Station Skylab completed. Jerry Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue have turned in for the night. Thursday, the crew will sleep in until 7:30 a.m. Central Time to begin a fairly relaxed day that includes several hours of free time and an opportunity to take a shower. Science work Thursday includes an Earth resources survey that will last one full orbit around the world and one period of solar physics investigations with Skylab's observatory by science pilot Gibson. With 9 more days to go before returning to Earth after an 84-day visit to the space station, Carr, Gibson, and Pogue will answer questions submitted by newsmen in an in-flight press conference Thursday. After a routine science workday Friday, the crew will begin preparations for final spacewalk. Sunday's spacewalk by Carr and Gibson will be to retrieve film from the observatory.
And that was NASA spokesman Terry White.
CBS News.
CBS News. Daylight saving time comes under fire. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour,
News from Suez, from Havana, from Brisbane, Australia, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. Now, here is Lowell Thomas and the news.
Good evening, everybody.
CBS News. In Hawaii today, there was no more gasoline than usual, but the lines at the filling stations were much shorter. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
CBS News. The energy bill runs out of steam. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From La Paz, Bolivia, from the Suez Canal, from Gaithersburg, Maryland, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. Now, here is Lowell Thomas.
CBS News. The House Judiciary Committee moves forward on impeachment proceedings, and President Nixon is named as a material witness in the Ellsberg break-in. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue, finishing their 75th day in space aboard Space Station Skylab, have crawled into their hanging sleeping bags after a workday that included photographing a distant star for evidence of extreme ultraviolet radiation. Carr, Gibson, and Pogue Wednesday will spend almost 28 hours among themselves gathering scientific information about the sun, resources here on Earth, and about man's adaptability to long-duration space flights. Thursday is the final day off in space for the Skylab 4 crew, with one Earth Resources survey and an in-flight press conference scheduled. The threesome have 10 more days aboard Skylab before returning to Earth February 8th. Sunday, Carr and Gibson will spacewalk to retrieve film cassettes from the Solar Observatory for the return home.
It's 11:39, and it's time now for the KTRH Late Night News Business Report with newsman Howard Phillips.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
PM, this is KLBJ Austin.
CBS News. The Cost of Living Council is yielding to the oil shortage and exempting the petrochemical segment from price control. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Clock.
news of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Merrill Muller in Los Angeles, and at this hour, the...
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From Reno, Nevada. From Christchurch, New Zealand. From Sukhothai, Thailand, comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. Now, here is Lowell Thomas and the news.
Good evening, everybody.
CBS News. The President addresses the Congress on the State of the Union. Not all members of Congress agree with his assessment. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
The time at the tone will be 5 p.m.
CBS News. The House Judiciary Committee moves to get full subpoena powers. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
CBS News. Energy Chief William Simon indicates he may order gasoline stations to sell each customer only a minimum amount of gasoline. I'm Jim Kilpatrick reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
CBS News. Long-distance truckers have called for a work stoppage to begin at this hour. There's been some violence in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Connecticut, and elsewhere. I'm Stuart Novins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dallas Townsend with the CBS World News Roundup.
CBS News, 25% more of the retail sales business of the country is removed from wage and price controls, leaving a final 25% of the retail volume still under control. I'm Reed Collins reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Lowell Thomas brings the news. From Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. From Istanbul. From Sao Paulo, Brazil. Comes today's news as reported by America's foremost newscaster, Lowell Thomas. Now, here is Lowell Thomas and the news.
Good evening, everybody. They're a sweep of the Earth. They were closing out one of the greatest scientific exploits of all time. And they are now preparing to come home, return to Earth next week. And their doctors are saying the significant thing at the moment is that we have a crew in good health. So it seems that maybe man can stay out there in space almost indefinitely.
CBS News. It could have been the darkness of daylight saving time, but the Punxsutawney groundhog saw only a wan shadow today, and that is interpreted by the head of the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club as meaning 6 more weeks of mild winter. Good morning, I'm Neil Strauser reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
CBS News. There's been a sharp difference of opinion on the oil situation at Senate hearings now underway in Washington. Good day, I'm Steve Young reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
Tone 3 p.m.
CBS News. Governor Milton Schaaf of Pennsylvania, one of the states hardest hit by the spreading truckers' slowdown, has called an emergency meeting in Washington tomorrow, inviting the governors of 9 states, senators and congressmen, Energy Chief William Simon, and representatives of 14 independent truckers' associations. I'm Christopher Glenn, reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
As they head toward a planned Friday splashdown in the Pacific, KTRH News talked to Johnson Space Center physician Dr. Royce Hawkins about the conditions of the astronauts, Gerald Carr, Ed Gibson, and Bill Pogue. He says the crew's good health means flights even longer than the present 84-day mission are entirely feasible.
I think we can say from what we've seen here with the certainly these last 2 missions and this one that man can extend the time that we've been in space. I don't know yet that I'm willing to commit ourselves to a year, although I'm very optimistic about it. I would, before saying or trying to pin it to any specific time, I would rather wait until we see what the results of our laboratory studies post-flight show us, because we haven't yet had a chance really to look at all of the cellular levels, the hormonal levels, to understand whether there are any continuing changes here that could dictate otherwise about extensions and times. But we certainly feel very optimistic about it.
That's state and local news on this portion of the Weekend Report. I'm Jerry Kamen.
6 p.m. and time for CBS News.
CBS News. Good in the short run, bad in the long run. The testimony of 4 economists on rolling back oil prices now or setting a ceiling on them. I'm Bob McNamara, sitting in for John Meyer on the CBS Radio Network.
CBS News. A plea for an end to the independent truckers' shutdown tonight, and it comes from Energy Chief William Simon and 3 cabinet officers. Good evening. This is David Jackson reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
News of the hour on the hour from American Information Radio. This is Tim O'Donnell in New York, and at this hour, 3...
KTRH 740 in Houston. CBS News. In his State of the Union message, President Nixon said that Arab oil producers will meet soon to discuss lifting their embargo against the U.S. Just when the embargo may go is a question discussed today in the Arab press. Good morning, I'm Steve Young reporting on the CBS Radio Network. The last scheduled spacewalk of their mission, which is set to end with splashdown off the California coast this Friday, 84 days after the launch of the crew. Gerald Carr and William Pogue will be collecting film from outside telescopes so they can bring it back to Earth.
Their last walk in space, this after getting ready to come home by storing up the film and things in the command module. Everything has gone so well, doctors and scientists back here on the ground are talking about longer flights. One of those is the doctor out at the JSC, Royce Hawkins.
I think we can say from what we've seen here with the certainly these last 2 missions and this one that man can extend the time that we've been in space. I don't know yet that I'm willing to commit ourselves to a year, although I'm very optimistic about it. I would, before saying or trying to pin it to any specific time, I would rather wait until we see what the results of our laboratory studies post-flight show us, because we haven't yet had a chance really to look at all of the cellular levels, the hormonal levels, to understand whether there are any continuing changes here that could dictate otherwise about extensions and times. But we certainly feel very optimistic about it.